And we're back. Welcome back to Riders of the Dawn. This is Stu.
This is Jay.
And today we're going to talk about top 10 fantasy authors. This is part 2.
Part 2. So, again, we're coming at you live from the car. And by live, I mean previously recorded.
Previously recorded.
Previously recorded.
We could actually live stream this straight to YouTube.
We could.
That is something that we could do in the future.
Previously recorded in front of a live studio audience.
Yeah. So, what were the first 5 we did? We did
Tolkien. So Tolkien was one.
Tolkien, Sanderson,
Moorcock.
And who else did we talk about? Lawrence and
Mark Lawrence, yeah, and then one more.
Who's the 5th one? So we're trying to not make sure we don't repeat ourselves.
Yeah.
Make sure we don't repeat ourselves here.
Erickson.
Steven Erickson.
Erickson.
So why don't we start with Robert Jordan today?
Okay. So Robert Jordan, famous for The Wheel of Time, this huge epic. Recently, I think 2 years ago, the entire series was nominated for a Hugo, which is pretty rare, from what I understand.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
It didn't win, which is no, I don't think it's weird, because if you take the work as a whole, it's pretty good. If you take individual books, it's the best fantasy ever written. So it's hard to take. It's a 14-book series. The last 3 of which were finished by Brandon Sanderson, who was on the first half, and the story is fantastic. I love the lore. I love how he. I love most of the characters. I love most of the characters. I love all of the characters most of the time. Let me say that. There's the way that he talks about fate and how time is cyclical. And
yeah, he had this idea, and if you ever get the audiobooks, there's this interview they have at the end of all the audiobooks where he's like, our mythology is their past.
Yeah, their past.
And our time is their mythology.
Yeah.
So there's like this alternating between what you end up finding out. I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, there's this alternating mythology idea. There's a wheel of time. Time is cyclical, which is the big broad concept. He has a magic system, which is
the one power.
Yeah, which is pretty good. It's like some author, like Brandon Sanderson in his books, tends to make his magic systems a lot more specific.
Yeah.
But Robert Jordan did a pretty limited magic system, and I think that influenced a lot of people to further develop that idea of a really very specific, very limited magic system. And so yeah, it's definitely a super influential series. He did other books. Robert Jordan's actually a pen name that he used for his fantasy books. He wrote other books as well, and I don't actually remember his real name.
Yeah, I don't remember his real name either. But he actually wrote Conan books too.
Yeah, he wrote a number of Conan books. And in the 70s, I think, he attracted attention of publishers because he could write a book in a week.
Yeah.
So he would write these Conan books on his spring break from teaching.
Yeah.
And and then publish a Conan book. And we'll talk about Robert E. Howard today too, I think. But
yeah.
So here's the thing about Wheel of Time. The first book is awesome, and the awesomeness continues. Then there's this slogging middle of the series that's just not very fun to read if you like those first books. So I think part of the problem with Wheel of Time, there's people who are big fans of those middle books. There has to be.
There has to be.
It's like you have a different audience focus or a different demographic for books 6 through 10.
Imagine the middle books are like George R. R. Martin books, but less grimdark.
Yeah, but without any of the stuff that people tend to like about George R. R. Martin.
Yeah,
sex and
it's very political.
incest. And,
yeah,
I don't. Dude, it's really into incest. So yeah, it's without that. It's like all this political intrigue stuff and like, you know, characters betraying whatever. And frankly, I just don't find that interesting. Especially in comparison to the first 4 or 5 books where there's this massive...
Yeah, it's just action-packed.
There's action-packed and there's constant exposition of a massive, detailed world. Constant exploration by the characters, learning about new places and new times as the world sort of unfolds. The first book's called Eye of the World, and that's kind of what it's like. It's like you're at the center of this world, and then as the series goes on, you see more and more and more of what that world is.
Yeah. The scope is really massive. Now, I think the criticism that we're giving of the series is part of the reason it took me so long to read them, because it's like, oh man, the first books are really great, and then it's just like slow forever, and then it's really good again at the end. It's a correct criticism, but overall I would say it is still really worth the read.
Yeah, and it's very, very influential. It's one of the longest series out there that actually has a continuous arc.
Yeah, it's one arc rather than...
Versus, I don't know, like the Redwall books, that there's like 28 of those, but they're all just separate individual little stories. So it's one of the longest series out there, and it's certainly one of the most epic. The books tend to be fairly long.
Yeah.
They're somewhere in the area of 200,000 to 300,000 words a piece. With that, and here's kind of the crappy part, is like the boring books are longer. So the books where it's like you get to the end of it, you're like, you turn page like 850, and the book ends, you're like,
Nothing happened.
Nothing happened. Yeah. People sat around and talked for 850 pages. Like, you didn't move any meaningfully closer to the end of the story arc.
Yeah, and there's one of the books that I can't remember off the top of my head. It's like the entire book, they're talking, there's more talking, and then suddenly someone realizes, hey, we haven't killed anyone in this book, and so he just goes off and kills a bad guy. Yeah. That feels like you haven't even mentioned him for the whole book.
Yeah. There are some, like, quote, Game of Thrones type moments in some of those middle books. Like Pedro Nile. Oh, I don't want to give you details. But it's just like people get murdered very unexpectedly in a couple places, and it's like the punctuation of interest in the slogging boringness. Yeah. And while we're on the subject of George R. R. Martin, let's call him an honorable mention.
Yeah.
I don't like him. I don't like his books. It's not that I dislike him as a person. I don't care for his stories. I don't find them interesting or like particularly readable. Mm-hmm. The stuff that's salacious doesn't particularly interest me. It doesn't titillate me in any way. I'm pretty hardened. I'm a pretty hardened dude. I'm just gonna say that. Like, and you guys, though, maybe if you're watching, you don't know me all that well. If you know me from the YouTube channel, you may be surprised to know that, like, things don't really bother me. Like, nothing really bothers me or particularly interests me when it comes to the taboo, right? If I'm, like, reading about some, like, taboo sexual practice, I'm just like, well, that's kind of interesting, I guess. It's like, oh, yeah, people like to put things in these places. Okay. That's weird. I don't want to do that. So, like, I'm a pretty hardened dude. When it comes to, like, gross stuff, I've been reading horror for 20 years. Nothing, it doesn't really get to me. So anyway.
Another honorable mention, since we're talking about George R. R. Martin, is one of his, I guess you might say, proteges, is Joe Abercrombie, who also writes Grimdark. I love his books. And I know he's got a...
Well, let's just talk about it.
Let's just talk about it. He's got a...
Whatever, we're making a list of 11.
All right, the list is 11. So Joe Abercrombie writes really action-packed grimdark. And it's, to me, he has a trilogy which introduces you to this world. And for the life of me, I can't think of the name of it, but it introduces these characters that you see as being really powerful, and what's so great about it is by the end, instead of the character growth being, look how powerful I am, now I can conquer the great evil, the character growth is all this growth that you thought was happening was not real. You're actually bullshit, and now I control you. It's oh god, it's so good. And I'll think of the name of it. We'll put it in the description because it's such a great series to read. And then he wrote books surrounding this series in the same
way as Stephen
world.
King used to do.
But it's not in the multiverse. It's in the same world.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's oh god, it's so good. It's making me want to go reread it right now.
Yeah. Let's transition more grimdark.
Glen Cook?
Glen Cook. Let's talk about Glen Cook.
Glen Cook.
So before we move on, by the way, Robert Jordan, the books that are good in Wheel of Time are really good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to
They completely outweigh the bad.
Yeah, they outweigh the bad. The books that are good are really good. If you can find a way to slog through the bad, I don't know if there's people who are like speed readers that can just be like, okay, that's cool, and get on with it. Robert Jordan uses too many color words sometimes. That's another criticism of his prose. He uses words like incredulous too often.
Yeah.
It's not that big a deal. It just kind of sticks out at me as a writer. I'm like, you're using that word again?
Well, and after 14 books,
it'd be like if you're a musician and you have like a C major 7 chord at the beginning of every song.
Yeah.
Just kind of, it's a cool chord, guys. Let's just do a different one.
But, the first 6 Star Trek movies average out to be pretty good.
Yeah.
All 14 Wheel of Time books average out to be really good.
So anyway, let's talk about Glen Cook.
So Glen Cook, the writer of Black Company.
Yeah,
so,
there's a bunch of Black Company books. It's like the history of this mercenary band.
Mm-hmm.
Glen Cook is one of the originators of like grimdark fantasy. Basically, you can read the first book. I really like it. It's written in a first-person perspective, which I don't usually like, but it really works in this particular one because it's written by like the company historian, so it's like him writing about their exploits. The mercenary band essentially gets hired by the Dark Lord, and they don't realize it, and so they end up fighting and winning the war for the Dark Lord, as like the champions of the Dark Lord's army. And so when it came out, it was a pretty big reversal of what you were used to. It's like these guys were fighting. They were kind of reluctant heroes for the dark side.
Yeah.
Even to the point where the main character has this sort of weird, ends up with this weird crush on the Dark Lord's a woman. He ends up with this weird crush on her, and then she likes him back, and it's weird. And it's just got some cool twists. It's really pretty cool. So very, very influential writer. He wrote several trilogies of the Black Company. There was the Books of the North, and there's like 2 other trilogies, 2 or 3 others. I only read like the first one, so they're really influential. If you like Steven Erikson, you'll like Glen Cook. Glen Cook writes, it's like military focused.
Yeah.
It's very military focused, which has a flavor to it that I think repeats in Erikson. In a good way.
And I was going to say that, Malazan Book of the Fallen is heavily influenced by Glen Cook. So if you want to see some of that influence, definitely check out Black Company. Did he do anything else that you can think of?
Not really. Sure that's the main thing that you should probably. I think he's written other stuff, but that's the main thing that you should start with. Robert Jordan's written other stuff too, but you're really gonna read it for all the time. Not too much misunderstanding. Same thing with Tolkien. You're gonna read it for Lord of the Rings, similarly. You're probably not gonna read him for like Farmer Giles of Ham, although I like Farmer Giles of Ham, or Thief by Niddle or some of his other stuff, which I consider really profound, good art. But that's not why you read Tolkien. You don't read Tolkien for the other things. You read for the big ones. Next,
let's see. We did
Ursula Le Guin.
Okay, Ursula Le Guin.
Ursula Le Guin or Le Guin. She was a fantasy, or is a fantasy author. She finally got like a Lifetime Achievement Award from Pulitzer, I think, which was really big because she's a fantasy author. And then she went on this tirade about how evil Amazon is, probably because she doesn't actually exist in the business. She has agents and publishers do her business, and she's like, Amazon's just seeking profits. Like, what do you think you're doing and your company's doing? Anyway, she's a great author. She wrote the Earth-Sea Cycle. Earth-Sea Cycle is really, it's good for teen young adult, and it's one of the first things that I think targets the post-middle grade readers, but they're not like adult readers yet.
Right.
And she has really good magic systems. The magic system's built around knowing the true name of things, so that's a really good influence on a lot of people.
On a lot of things. I mean, you see that in Jim Butcher,
yeah,
and the Magician's trilogy, which is another really good one.
So I really enjoyed the magic system in the DC books. When you know something's true name, like everything has a true name, and when you learn it, then you get power over it. So you don't want to reveal your true inner name, because then somebody can have power over you.
Yeah.
Dragons speak only true names,
which is why they're so powerful.
And in order to have power, you can have power over a dragon by knowing its true name. There's a part in the first book where the main character goes out and calls this dragon by name, and the dragon has to obey him and leave where he's at. He commands the dragon to leave, and the dragon must obey because his true name was called out. And then later he becomes like a dragon talker. He knows so much of there's a true language. He knows so much of it that he can communicate with dragons and be friends with them, and they'll do things for him. Which is really
and something you guys might be more familiar with is, Patrick Rothfuss uses this idea in the Kingkiller Chronicles. So basically, the first one's called The Name of the Wind. The whole point is that they're looking for the true names of things so that they can have command over it. And that's where this idea comes from. So it's pretty cool.
So the big influence. They're well written. I enjoy the prose. They're also, it's a fairly condensed writing style in that you progress through the plot at a good pace. Kind of like Michael Moorcock has a really strong sense of pace if you ever read him. He'll have an event happen really, really regular. Like every page or 2 pages, something happens and pushes the plot forward or in a new direction. And that's the way he's always written, and it's the way he tells people to read if you don't before a reader. Ursula Le Guin, likewise, will really push plot forward. There's always something interesting happening. There's always something that happens in every page. There's no wasted exposition or dialogue. She does a really, really good job with it, and I think it's worth studying if you're a writer to just look at her pacing. She does a really good job.
Yeah.
Who's next?
So we did Jordan, Glen Cook.
We did Terry Goodkind.
Terry Goodkind. Terry Goodkind's a huge name. If you might be more familiar with Wizard's First Rule than actually Terry Goodkind's name. So Wizard's First Rule is, God, I feel like he's still coming out with books for that. It's really long. The first one is called Wizard's First Rule, and it's a very Arthurian style adventure fantasy, where you have this character called the Seeker, who has a kind of guardian person. I'm trying to remember the book, who is like a female counterpart to that, and they also made actually a show. I don't know if you were aware of this.
No,
it was a television show.
They technically made a Wheel of Time TV show.
Yeah,
just one episode, and aired it in the middle of the night so that they could keep the rights.
Yeah, no, it was. This ran for 3 seasons, 2 or 3 seasons.
I don't watch TV, guys. So I'm totally not aware of when things happen. Stuff comes out.
This was years ago. This was probably 6 or 7 years ago, and I don't remember what channel.
So definitely post my TV. I stopped watching TV in 2001.
This was like, we were living in Vegas at the time.
Okay.
When I was watching it, and I think it was already off the air. So,
I think the only show I watched in Vegas was Star Trek and the show that shall not be named. Golden Wash Cups. That's all I'll tell you guys. It's a joke that's, I don't know if anyone's ever gonna get that joke. If you get that joke, you email me,
and we'll be friends.
Stu at davidbstewart stewart.com or dbspress.com. I'll give you a free book if you know what I'm referencing. I will give you a free book. I'll give you my new book for free.
Okay. Yeah. So he did Wizard's First Rule. And yeah, I feel like it was 10 or more books. Now this is one of those series. If you ever go into a used bookstore, you're gonna see tons of copies of these books, just because everyone's read them, and they upcycle the book. They're like, here, someone else needs to enjoy this book. So it was really, really well done, really influential. I guess you would say adventure fantasy. And a lot like Robert Jordan, there's this idea of evil that you have to slay through good. And like I said, it's very Arthurian, so one of the characters is basically Merlin. And your seeker wields a magic sword. He's basically Arthur. And
so pretty influential in Twilight Force.
Yeah, so pretty influential in Twilight Force.
You know who I think was actually really influential in Twilight Force? I'm just like projecting here. And maybe we've done 5, at least 5. We can do some more honorable mentions.
I think that was 4.
Did we do 4?
I think that was 4.
Joe Abercrombie.
Oh, we added Joe Abercrombie.
Yeah, we added Joe Abercrombie. We can just talk about some more. So here's like more that we think about. I'm going to mention 2 names at once because they wrote as a team for a long time. That's Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. Tracy is a dude, by the way. That's a dude with the name Tracy. Their writing team, they wrote the Dragonlance. They created the Dragonlance IP. And so that was also like a young adult teen-focused demographic of fantasy. It's big-time adventure fantasy. It's all about having adventures. It's now you're going to see the Dungeons and Dragons branding on all of it because they worked for Wizards of the Coast when they wrote the books, and so it was kind of done through that to sort of cross-promote things. This Dragonlance IP. If you're not into RPGs, don't worry, that you don't need to be. Yeah. But the beginning of the first book, there's 2 trilogies at the beginning, and it's all Dragons of this. So the first one's called Dragons of Autumn's Twilight, and it's basically like a D&D party assembling at the beginning of the book. And it's your heroes, and they, each one is like a different race and a different kind of person, and very, very radically different characters from each other, right? Yeah. It's not quite like Lord of the Rings, where the hobbits are all pretty similar little dudes. They each have their own personality, but they're all hobbits. Where it's like this one has 1 halfling and a half elf and a wizard, a huge war, like a knight. They have a paladin, so it feels very, very D&D, but the story kind of takes off, and it's pretty influential. A lot of people consider it, the like teen pulp, and that's cool. So if you want like just a classic adventure story, there's those, and they've made 1 million of those books. I haven't read hardly any of them, but they've made 1 million of them.
Yeah. Well, and who we didn't mention was Robert E.
Oh, Robert Howard. Robert E. Howard. Yeah, this is one that we definitely wanted on the list. Let's talk about him too. Yeah. This is not an honorable mention.
He is on the list.
He's a guy who committed suicide at like the age of 30. So we missed a lot of what his potential could have been. He created Conan the Barbarian. And through the creation of Conan the Barbarian and how popular that character was, he really was formative in the pulp genres. And nowadays, pulp usually just means like bad or garbage. Yeah. And it meant bad or garbage back then, but it was created by people who really didn't like the fact that everyone wanted to read stuff that wasn't their books. So there's this idea that there's this literary fiction where things are serious and we operate in the real world. And then there's pulp. There's this worthless pulp. They're chasing dragons in their pulp books, right? No. So this is what it was. He wrote fantasy that was popular. He wrote popular fiction. So there's this idea of popular fiction being different from literary fiction. And I always hated that. Same thing with popular music. It was like, oh, it's in popular music versus unpopular music.
Right.
Or I want to write popular music. I don't know about you guys.
Or emo music. Music that has emotion.
It's emotional. Like no one's ever played with emotion before. This is what a novel concept. Music that communicates emotion.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was really formative in sort of the pop genres, pop fantasy, and he created, mostly Robert E. Howard as far as fantasy goes, the adventure fantasy, heroic fantasy. Conan is a classic hero, and he goes on adventures and overcomes great obstacles and shows his greatness by destroying things with his mighty sword.
The world needs more Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah, it really does.
And
Conan became an IP of its own, and people picked it up, including Robert Jordan, and wrote Conan books and Conan stories and Conan comics, and Arnold Schwarzenegger as Conan the Barbarian, training to look like Conan the Barbarian. He went and won Mr. Olympia for fun. Yeah. That's Arnold. It's like people are like, oh, he shouldn't have won. It's like it's just the power of him. He just walked in the room and it's like, we got to give it to
Arnold, man.
we got to give that trophy to Arnold.
You look at Arnold in that movie, and you couldn't have had any other person play Conan. I know they did a remake of Conan, and I just refused to watch it. I got to be honest.
It had Momoa in it, and he it's not that he has a bad body, but dude, he's
not Conan.
He's quite svelte. He's quite svelte compared to Arnold in his heyday. And Arnold was like that, and this is what they said. Arnold has said this. If we didn't have Arnold, we would have to build him.
Yes. Yeah.
Because no one else could have played that character at that time and created that imagery and done what. And I think it's a classic movie too.
It is. God, you know what? So, now all I want to do is watch Conan the Barbarian. I know we've gotten a little bit off the topic, but
it's so good. It also created that movie also created a really bad trope, which is the casting of a sword in snow. It's like you don't cast swords, guys. You don't. You slowly forge them by hammering out. Yeah. Very difficult to forge and very difficult to smelt iron. Yeah. If you read my book, Muramasa Blood Drinker, I have a really, really long section in it. I have a whole couple of chapters about how you forge a sword. It's a difficult process. You don't just heat up some iron and pour it in a mold. But like Conan the Barbarian,
you could make a crappy sword that way.
It would be like a cast iron frying pan, and you'd hit somebody's shield and it would shatter into pieces, and you're like, now that you're distracted by my sword shattering, let me run away.
Yeah.
I'll sew myself and run away now.
Yeah. All right, well, that's it for us today. Guys, my book, Cloaked in Darkness, is free this week until Sunday night. Check it out. It's a quick read. Usually you can finish it in about an hour.
Cool magic system based on chakras.
Based on Hindu chakras, yeah.
Yeah. And you can also get my sci-fi novel this week, Prophet of the God Seed. It's got time dilation. Yeah. If you like relativity thoroughly enforced in your science fiction, that's a book for you. Also, if you like the ideas of technological singularity, I tackle both those in this book, and so hopefully you'll read it. Yeah. And I will remind you that if you read a book, it's very helpful to your fellow consumers to leave a review.
Yes, and we
even if you don't like it,
as your fellow authors, really appreciate that. Yes, whether you like it or not,
because that informs other consumers as to whether they will like it.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys, that's going to do it for Writers of the Dawn. I'm Jay. You can find me at MatthewJWellman.com.
I'm Stu. You can find me at dvspress.com and davidvstewart.com. Email the show at all of our emails everywhere, or just YouTube comments.
Yes, because we are on the YouTubes now.
So, all right. We'll see you guys later.
Have a good one.